Okay, so I'll just do the quick potted intro. Gareth, having come out of statistics and operational research, has worked just about everywhere, but is now as the Chief Scientific Officer at Machine Medicine Technologies that's looking to apply computational statistics to the healthcare sector. And it's over to you.
Great, thanks a lot. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak. So I'll be talking about how computer vision is being used by us at Machine Medicine to help Parkinson's disease patients. So I'll sort of try and just go for everything. And if I don't spend enough time on any particular section, we can talk about it at the end. It's always hard to sort of pitch these things because people have got a variety of backgrounds here. So I'd start off by saying, who am I? So yeah, I was educated also at the University of Warwick. I have a background in statistics and operational research. I've done various data science roles before data science was a trendy term, but yeah, back I've always done sort of some form of statistical modeling, and now I'm at Machine Medicine, and my role is basically head of data science and product manager. So the chief scientific officer, the science part is really data science, statistics, as opposed to sort of medicinal science, because we are really using sort of computational statistics to sort of develop, ways of improving treatments. So what is Machine Medicine? We're a medtech startup founded in 2017. We're backed by venture capital and innovation grants. Our founder, Jonathan, has a background in both medicine and machine learning, which is why he brought them both together for this company. We have sort of clients who are clinical researchers in academia, pharma, and our first product is KelVin-PD, and the PD there stands for Parkinson's disease, and it will be the focus of this talk. So I'll start by just explaining what is a Parkinson's disease assessment, because that context is quite important for explaining what we do. Now, the text doesn't really matter too much. The point is that there are multiple sort of tasks that about 15 tasks make up a single Parkinson's disease assessment. This is one of these tasks, and essentially what would happen is a patient will come in, they'll have to do all these tasks, a nurse or a doctor will conduct the assessment, and they will rate the patient's ability to move on this kind of 5-point scale, where it's like 0 is normal, up to 4 is severe, and they are sort of severely Parkinsonian in this particular task. And what does this look like? So I'll just show you an example. This is a patient doing this test, which is the finger tapping test. He's just trying to tap his fingers together as quickly as possible. And as you can see, he has Parkinson's disease. He's not fully able to do it. Now, what is the purpose of these assessments? It's ultimately to work out the best treatment for the patients. So here on the left is the patient, without any kind of medication. And the way we assess whether medication is working for the patients is he'll do the same test immediately after taking the medication. So this is the same day, same patient on the same day. He's just taken his medication and he's doing the same test about an hour later. And you can kind of see his whole body is moving because of the effect of the medication. And I'll just give you one more. I'll just say quickly, by the way, this is the sort of one patient who has given us complete permission to use his image in any way we like. So if you ever see Machine Medicine publish a paper or presented at a conference, you'll always see a picture of this guy because he's decided to, sign away his rights. Obviously, everyone else who is assessed for our platform is, protected by various regulations. So another one of these tasks in the Parkinson's disease assessment is the gait task, which is walking up and down a corridor. And again, this same patient, you can see he's walking without the medication. It's quite difficult to walk. And again, the same test about an hour later, he's able to walk perfectly well. And this gait examination will be, I'll be talking about some of the analysis we do in this particular task in a minute. So this is a Parkinson's disease assessment. Now, KelvinPD, in its simplest form, is basically digitizing this assessment process. So instead of having a piece of paper and recording on a camcorder, they'll simply open a sort of digitized form, which can be run on any kind of mobile device, a tablet or smartphone. They'll take a video clip with the camera of the smartphone, and then they'll fill out these ratings on this 5-point scale, as I said earlier. Now, that's not all we do, obviously. There would also, as a sort of analysis step afterwards. Now, the data doesn't stay on the phone, it gets uploaded to the cloud. Everyone loves the cloud. We run on AWS, like most of the world now. And when you log into our online platform, you'll be able to do sort of analysis on the videos. So this is what our analysis page looks like. This is an example of the video we saw earlier of this patient finger tapping. And what you'll see on the right here, next to the video, is the sort of pose estimation that we've extracted from the video. And this is the sort of fundamental building block of pretty much all the analysis we do. So I'll talk about more in that in a second, but essentially you can see using pose estimation, we can kind of extract these kind of graphs, like on the right here. And you can see this is a very periodic signal. So we've managed to extract the movement of him doing the finger tapping quite accurately, just from this video clip. And on the bottom right here, there are the various sort of metrics we calculate. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the point is it's extracting all these sort of key biomarkers that are the sort of things that a healthcare practitioner would look for when trying to judge how well the patient's doing this particular task. So pose estimation, if you've ever seen these kind of images, you've probably seen them shared around online or video clips. This is not us. This is just from one of the companies that has developed this kind of stuff. Basically, pose estimation takes images, and it will overlay. Well, it will attempt to first of all identify the sort of key points, the sort of joints within the body, and that way you can sort of build this sort of frame, this kind of rough wireframe of how people are moving. So the particular pose estimation software we use looks a bit like this. We'll get sort of key points for the body. Here you can see on the left, and on the right there's a sort of more detailed model used for the hand, which of course is useful for when we are doing a sort of finger tapping analysis. All we really need is the sort of hand key points. And this is all done for a deep neural net that's many layers deep and has been trained for a long time. So how do we use pose estimation? Here's a very simple example. I've zoomed in on the guy's hand here. As you can see, these sort of key points are identified, and all we really care about when someone is finger tapping is the distance between the index finger and the thumb, right? Because that's really what we're measuring. And from that, we can extract, for instance, at the top here, this very smooth kind of sort of periodic signal, which lets us sort of extract how quickly he's moving. The sort of peaks of this signal allow us to, extract how far his, fingers ever get. So this is what we'd call the amplitude of the movement, essentially. And the distance between those peaks is able to, give us the frequency of the movement. So that's a sort of overview of some of the sort of biomarkers we extract. And the next step beyond this is taking this and there'll be several more biomarkers. Obviously, those would then feed into a machine learning model that would be able to then predict the sort of clinical rating that you would give to this person based on that video clip. Now, going back to the walking test, what we sort of just delving a little bit more into this sort of gait test analysis, we sort of take, as mentioned before, this sort of raw video will overlay the pose estimation, and using some combination of sort of analysis and sort of clinical expertise, will extract the features that are really most clinically relevant. So you see we've kind of extracted 3 features here. The top feature is essentially measuring how much the person sways from the left and the right, which is, if someone's very healthy and walking, they'll be upright, but if they are Parkinsonian, they'll sway a bit. And then these other 2 signals are sort of measuring essentially some sort of periodic, nature of how the person is moving. Now, the key thing is you can look at these 3 signals, and while you can see some periodicity, there's kind of a lot of noise there, and we're working in a sort of, we're working with what we have, which is a 2D image of a person walking towards the camera and going away, which is not all the information you would need to perfectly measure this, but it is enough information to do a pretty accurate job when you combine these different signals. So essentially what we do is we combine these different signals, or we combine the information we get from these signals, and together we can get a pretty good estimate of how quickly the person is walking. Despite not knowing the 3D coordinates, despite only having the 2D coordinates, we can get a pretty good estimate. And the way we sort of combine this information is in a form called Bayesian Statistics. Bayesian Statistics essentially, is the idea that you don't start from nothing. You start with your best guess of reality based on all the information you had before, and then the new data you get in, you feed into the system, is updating that sort of initial assumption. The initial assumption being called the prior, and then once you've seen the data is what you'd call the posterior. So our sort of starting assumption in the top left here is that everyone is walking around a 2 hertz, 2 steps a second, which if next time you're walking anywhere, try and count your steps and the seconds, you're probably walking around about 2 hertz, 2 steps per second. But this isn't really telling us a lot. This is just what we'd expect from an average person. And as we get more data into the system, this 1600 frames we can see is the video of someone doing a gait examination. And as you can see, at the start, there's a lot of uncertainty. These red lines are the sort of credible interval. So, this is our sort of 95% credible interval. So we're 95% certain that the real frequency is somewhere within here. And as you can see, of course, as it goes on and we get more information, slowly it narrows until we pretty much reach a sort of plateau when we're fairly certain that it's correct. And given a few seconds of data, this system gets the 95% interval will always contain the true frequency that they're walking at. And when I say always, I mean 99.6% of the time, because I calculated it earlier. So it's pretty accurate in that sense, and this gives us a good measure of one of the key biomarkers that determines how well someone is walking. And all this is done obviously without any human looking at the video. Now humans would also look at the videos in any kind of sort of clinical research, but this is, as I'll talk in this minute, a very useful way of getting the most out of your data. So how accurate are the estimations? They correlate pretty well. On the bottom here, we have these sort of manually labeled. Someone in our company, painstakingly went and looked at about 300 videos and labeled, worked out exactly how quickly the person is walking, and then we compare it to what the system comes out with, and it's a high correlation, 0.8 something. So how much video do we need as well? After about 4.5 seconds, we get within a sort of 0.1 hertz of the truth always. You see there's a lot of uncertainty. Well, the error is quite high at first on average. This graph is the average across about 600 predictions. So yeah, essentially, most videos that would be taken of these kind of tests would probably last for maybe 30 seconds, something like that. So we're pretty confident that we'll get a good answer a lot quicker than that. And the most important thing, of course, when developing these kind of technologies is that it fits neatly into existing clinical workflows. So there's no point coming up with a new piece of technology and tell them, oh well, you have to do your test, but it has to now take 5 times longer to do. No, you want your technology to work within the existing kind of framework that people work within, and ideally make things easier for them. And is this clinically relevant as a tool? Well, some kind of analysis we've done here. This is a sort of t-test, basic kind of t-test of differences between groups. And what we have here is the distribution of the frequency with which people walk for the different ratings on the test. If you remember, there's a 5-point scale: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't actually have anyone who's rated a 4, but yeah, there's a significant difference. And what this is basically telling us is that, we're tapping into something that is useful for clinicians in assessing, the Parkinsonian nature of the patients they're looking at. And it's the similar case for the finger tapping. One of the most important biomarkers is the amplitude, how far the person is able to get their thumb from their finger when they're doing this. And we can see when we break down the different distributions, the people who are rated 0 tends to have a higher amplitude, and the sort of mild and slight is in the middle here, and the people who are very Parkinsonian have this distribution here. So obviously there's a lot of overlap, and that is why our system doesn't just look at one biomarker. We have to extract, normally about, well, some amount, maybe let's say 10 biomarkers, and then that's enough to sort of combine into a model that can be quite accurate. And I'll just finish up by sort of returning to a sort of question, which is, why are we doing this? Why KelVin-PD? Well, there's about 500 million people suffering from some kind of physical disability. What we talked about here is in the context of Parkinson's disease, which is the most common of these. However, the technology is applicable to any other kind of disease that affects people's motor functions. And as we talked about at the start, the tests, even though how well someone can walk, you might think this is quite an objective activity, and it is. Judging that is a subjective process. They have this sort of 5-point scale, and the categories are, is it mild or is it moderate, impairment, and that is open to interpretation. So when new drugs are being developed, generally they are relying on quite small data sets, and if you have some element of subjectivity clouding, adding noise to the data, that is a problem, basically, because you want to be able to get as much from a relatively small data set as possible to make trials sort of go smoothly, and ideally make drug trials quicker and less expensive, so it doesn't have to, you don't have to spend so much just to get a negative result, or spend so much to find a positive result. And obviously, one of the key things as a sort of underpinning of what we do is the fact that this is all done on a mobile device. Now, you might be thinking, well, if I had some kind of 3D video, surely I'd be able to measure someone walking better. And that's correct, but that would involve setting up some kind of bespoke kind of technology in the middle of a hallway in a busy hospital. So there's lots of other sort of technologies that are more accurate, quite frankly, than what we do. However, they're expensive and they don't run on a smartphone. So that's the key sort of principle around what the approach we're taking is. It's scalable, it can sort of use existing technology, and that's why it's used regularly by people, whereas other sort of technologies get sort of thrown by the wayside. So yeah, generally the people conducting the assessments, the nurses and neurologists, they tend to, save them a lot of time. When they used to spend an hour, now they spend 30 minutes. And of course, as I said just now, the pharmaceutical companies, medical devices, CROs, they are interested in just getting the most amount of objectivity and quality out of their data, and generally monitor, if there's any sort of inconsistencies, because often with a drug trial, it won't be happening on one site because it's very difficult to recruit patients. So we're supporting trials that are starting soon that are across multiple sites, right? So if you have, let's say 10 different sites, undoubtedly people are going to be subjectively judging things differently, right? I mean, it might not be a huge difference, but as soon as human subjectivity is coming in, there's going to be some slight differences. So the advantage of having some system where you don't have to have another person necessarily view every single video, but you can extract these various metrics automatically, just is a way of doing some kind of centralized monitoring, sort of quality control in a sense of the trial as it's going on, and sort of being able to identify any issues as they arise without having to pay many people to look at everything. So that is essentially the talk. That's any questions. Obviously, if you have any burning questions to ask me that cannot fit into this time, feel free to add me on LinkedIn there. I also write some stuff not to do with this particular stuff on Medium, so feel free to reach out on to me there as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Gareth. Super interesting. So we'll open for questions from the floor, and I'll just squeeze in one first. So what's the concordance like between the system and experts? You know, and I guess there's a couple of ways this could go, couldn't it?
Yeah, so this is always a sort of difficult thing to say, because what is concordance? You're not really it's not a binary decision. And so internally, we have too many different metrics. I would say we have about eight different standard metrics we use just to assess model quality, to give you an idea of how many different ways we like to look at things. And again, there's an issue around we do find that different sites who do use our technology, some of them are able to do much higher quality video, and that might just be the actual device, or it might just be the conditions they're recording in. And so generally the concordance will be better for them, because the algorithms are able to better extract the pose estimation and such. So yeah, I don't I'll probably just sort of leave that kind of vague answer. It's statistically significant by far, and what we do find is that when, you know, if you just take the raw output of our algorithms and combine it with the raw kind of information from the clinicians, both of those together are a better predictor combined than either of them individually. So the algorithms are measuring something that the clinicians are not, and the clinicians are measuring something the algorithm are not, because you know, both of them are picking up on things that the other aren't. So yeah, I hope that sort of answers the question.
It does, thank you. Look, and I'll just direct your attention towards the chat. We've had a couple of questions crop up there. Kenneth has asked, can you elaborate the potential to apply this to stroke/brain tumors that affect motion?
Absolutely. Well, in a sense, it's the same technology can be used for any kind of motor assessment. So if you're doing kind of rehabilitation, there will be similar kinds of tests they will carry out to find out whether someone is reacting well to treatment. So the reason our product is a Parkinson's disease product is because it's the largest market, and we are already thinking about how to sort of branch out into, it's not really, it's kind of a side horizontal jump into other areas. It's a very, it's a relatively simple thing for us to do. So yeah, in essence, it's the same kind of kettle of fish.
The same problem.
Yeah,
essentially.
I mean, one thing I will say as well is a sort of longer term direction for the company is something called deep brain stimulation. Now, if you're not familiar, deep brain stimulation is essentially like a pacemaker, but for the brain, if you can imagine a thing. So they'll put they'll put a wire into your brain which has a sort of, you know, current that can stimulate the brain, and this has been found to be very useful in treating various things, you know, Parkinson's disease, but also all kinds of other conditions, including even depression. The problem is that right now, even though it's very successful for some people, the rate at which it's not successful is a little bit too high. I think it's you know, maybe 10 to 20% don't really, people who get the treatment, which is very expensive by the way, don't see the kind of improvement that you would hope. But the main reason our point of view, the main reason is that these are very complex devices. So you can imagine there's lots of settings on, say, a pacemaker for the heart, but for a deep brain stimulator, there's many more orders of magnitude more. And you really need some kind of automated feedback loop between, a system, for instance, videoing the person, extracting the data, and then automatically sort of calibrating the sort of settings on this deep brain stimulator to get the best response. So basically, our sort of longer term strategy is to position ourselves so that we are providing the software to calibrate these devices, which we think has absolutely huge potential for things, including stroke rehabilitation.
Yeah, particularly under the current circumstances where I know the whole clinical trial space is now casting about trying to work out ways to not get people to have to go to hospitals to have checkups and do tests. Look, we've got a whole bundle more questions in here. So Nicholas has asked, great talk, what sort of checks do you have in place to make sure that AI is working?
Well, all the sort of usual things we compare to the ground truth that we have. So we train our AIs to try and predict the scores that the clinicians give, right? So the clinicians are giving a score. Our AI has no idea what the clinician says. That's our ground truth. We train it, and that essentially, I guess, was your question earlier, Paul, was what's the concordance?
Yeah.
So that's essentially how we do that.
Okay, so we've got a couple more here. So Manny has asked, excellent talk, Gareth. Do you apply KelVin-PD in dose optimization of levodopa and Parkinson's?
Well, so the videos you saw earlier of that patient is a patient who is on levodopa. Many of the trials are doing levodopa-based treatments. We don't currently, do dose optimization. But essentially, it's the main purpose of a lot of these trials is and the use of KelvinPD is to see how well levodopa has affected their performance. So it's kind of related, but we don't specifically do dose optimization yet.
It's upstream from that. Yeah. And lastly, and I think this is quite an interesting one. Faisal has asked, can KelvinPD be used for young onset Parkinson's as well? Is a model trained to predict Parkinson's manifestation in a younger cohort? Can it
one day? Yes, I hope so. We simply do not have enough data. If we had videos of every single Parkinson's disease patient on the planet, we certainly would be able to do this kind of age-specific prediction. Like any data set we have a range of people. There's some people who quite young, and there's a lot of people generally who are older. So it could be yes, and it's the constant sort of woe of the data scientist is I need more data. So if you happen to know anyone who is running any clinical trials specifically around younger people with Parkinson's disease, please put them in contact, and we'll be happy to talk to them, because we love to get more data, because the more data the system gets, the more it helps everyone who uses it. So yeah.
Fantastic. Is there any more questions from the floor then? People can just unmute and leap in. Fantastic. I shall take silence as consent. Thank you very much to Robert. Thank you very much to Gareth. Lots of chat there, lots of interesting questions. Look, I'm sure our speakers would be delighted for you to reach out on LinkedIn or via the various functions, so forth. So please, people, thank you very much. Once more, unmute if you can and give us a bit of a clap to clap us out. Or just me, I don't mind. Thank you. I'm not alone. Okay, thanks very much for joining us in there. We will be having some more talks coming up before the end of the year, so forth, helping you get through the long, dark, quarantined winter. But good to see you all here. Good to have a good crowd and such interesting discussions. So thank you very much to everyone. Take care of yourselves, and we shall see you next time.